Since humans have been living in space since November 2001, albeit only temporarily, every human being has been born on Earth. So it is purely speculative to answer the question of how or if human bodies would survive being born in space because, in reality, the possibility is too remote for many reasons. But just imagine for a moment that in the vastness of space, your life has just begun with no Earth, no air, and no planetary gravity to hold you down or restrain you. Hello, and welcome to Z. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. You are simply born into the cold, black, and unforgiving conditions of outer space. It sounds a little lonely and a bit scary, but what would it really be like to be born in space? First of all, astronauts must be in excellent physical condition to withstand the rigors of space travel before liftoff. They must complete extensive survival training, as well as strenuous physical exercise and demanding medical examinations. A pregnant woman is neither advised nor currently permitted to travel into space by NASA. Additionally, learning to walk in space involves going underwater, which calls for a great deal of endurance and stamina for an extremely fit athlete. These trials are tough enough, but an astronaut who is pregnant would most likely be unable to complete any of these activities. The second reason is that, even if an astronaut weren't already pregnant, conception is practically impossible in space. Couples would find it difficult to stay attached in the weightless environment, having to be anchored to both each other and the spacecraft. Fertilization of an egg would also be extremely awkward, as fluid flow to the embryo would be disrupted. To be more precise, it would be nearly impossible to gestate and develop a baby to full term. The fundamental question of being born in space is related to the effects of weightlessness on the human body. Many astronauts who travel into space and live on the International Space Station undergo tests to measure the effects of weightlessness on the human body, but the full effects are unknown. The closest we've come to learning the answers to those questions is a 2001 study on 20 pregnant rats who were sent to space and returned to give birth. All of the mother rats gave birth to babies that were normal in size, were able to breastfeed them normally, and did not experience a significant loss of muscle mass. The rat babies, however, had trouble righting themselves after being turned on their backs, but they eventually were able to do it. After 5 days of trying, Earth barn rats were able to right themselves immediately. This suggests an anomaly in the inner ear system of the space rats that Earth rats did not have. But that's literally the only conclusion from this elaborate experiment and doesn't tell us much at all. One of the primary scientific facts is that all fluids are affected in a major way by the lack of gravity. As you know, our bodies are made up of approximately 60% water. With all this fluid being pulled down by gravity on Earth, the body reacts in ways that are familiar to us. However, in a weightless environment with no gravity, bodily fluids are not being pulled down and instead are free to float around the body. Uniformly free-floating fluids in our bodies make our bodies behave differently than they do under normal gravitational circumstances. We already know what the specific effects of this are from years of space travel and astronauts' first-hand experiences. Space sickness affects over 50% of astronauts and is brought on by fluid expansion in the inner ear that occurs in a weightless environment. The symptoms of this fluid shift can range from moderate nausea and vomiting to severe headaches and disorientation. It's hard to picture carrying a child through pregnancy when experiencing both morning sickness and space sickness. Additionally, astronauts in space suffer from ocular cavity enlargement, which can cause problems for the optic nerve and give the appearance of a bulging eye. Additionally, astronauts observed a behavior in zero-gravity environments when tears merely well up in a ball around the eye until they are wiped away. On Earth, there is a condition known as chicken leg syndrome, wherein the heart pumps blood against gravity to force blood to the upper body parts where there is no gravity to draw fluids down. This causes the fluid above the heart to remain in the upper body, causing puffiness at the face and, in turn, chicken legs. More significant than the transient physical and visual problems, a pregnant lady who is already gaining weight and storing fluids would find it difficult to maintain the additional weight while her lower body's blood flow is disrupted. The brain is tricked into believing that the body has too much fluid in a weightless environment due to fluid expansion. As a result, the body would create less blood. Astronauts have lost up to 22% of their total blood volume in space, and blood loss weakens hearts. We can now take precautions to counteract the effects of our body fluids changing in a weightless environment. With the right pre-flight training, diet, exercise, and medications, which are still being developed, we may be able to counteract those weightlessness issues. Then, we could start imagining what it would look like to be born in these strange circumstances. There are a lot of other factors to take into account. For example, if you were born in space, you might end up with bulging eyes, develop skinny limbs from a lack of muscle growth due to weightlessness, and be unable to walk or lift anything heavy at all. The human skeleton would also be unable to develop normally, and you would probably suffer from spinal expansion due to the loss of heavy gravity. Without the normal activity and exercise that our bodies are used to, combined with all that gravitational fighting, a child's skeletal development could be seriously compromised without strong bones. A child born in space would presumably never learn to walk and would be sort of a default. Exposure to high radiation levels is another important component to take into account in this equation. To make matters worse, astronauts aboard the International Space Station are exposed to as much radiation in a single day as people on Earth are in a single year. Radiation in space is different from that on Earth, and the effects of cosmic rays on humans are still being studied. But we do know that the effects of radiation on the human body are very detrimental. Increasing risks for cancer damage to the central nervous system, cardiovascular disease, and irreversible damage to cells. These risks could be increased for a vulnerable newborn baby, and the growth and development of the child would be stunted. Survival rate under these conditions would be low. If you were born in some similar futuristic situation in outer space, you would never ever be able to go outside your body. Despite being born in space would still be that of a human. Our human bodies cannot exist in outer space without an elaborate spacesuit. This means that as you are raised after being born there, you would never be able to step foot outside nor breathe fresh, clean air. Under the protection of the Earth's atmosphere, you would be relegated to the confines of the space station's controlled environment on which you were born. An impetuous child who impossibly decided to ignore parental instruction and venture outside would die almost instantly in outer space. A kid who went outside to play with no spacesuit would lose consciousness almost immediately because of the lack of oxygen in space. Once you passed out, the lack of air pressure would cause an embolism in your body, which is the formation of gas bubbles and bodily fluids. Because of the lack of environmental pressure, you could swell up to almost twice your normal size. As if all that wasn't bad enough, UV rays, X-rays, and gamma radiation would scorch what's left of your young body. If your parent or guardian discovered you playing outside the spaceship without your spacesuit on within a minute or so, you just might survive. At some point, a human being born in space might want to return to Earth, and there is no telling how or if you might survive the trip to Earth, and if you did, there is no telling how your body would adapt to Earth's atmosphere, gravity, and environment. Many of the physical developmental challenges we discussed earlier would come into play with a return to earthly living after being born in space. There is the possibility that the skeleton would not have formed properly. Muscles that we need on Earth for standing erect and walking may not have developed fluid expansion in the body that happens in space would be the norm for you since you were born in space. But how would that fluid pressure change affect you when you experience gravity for the first time? And of course, you probably build a plans for humans to go to Mars. It would be interesting to see the effects of the Martian planet on the human body. Compared to someone that is born on Earth, we are wonderfully fit for Earth, but space is an integral to our species. Earth's magnetic fields and atmosphere shelter us from the ionizing radiation that streams through space like it fatal wind on the surface of Mars or aboard a spaceship. Long-term exposure to the highly charged energies of galactic cosmic radiation or the sudden flares of solar particle events would kill cells and make them malfunction or break strands in our DNA. And then there is the question of whether or not Martian microbes would make humans sick, although it's unclear if there are microbes lurking on Mars. Truthfully, we are a long way from determining if a human can give birth in space, and we know even Less about how our bodies would grow and develop outside of the Earth's atmosphere. There has not been much research outside of that on rats, and frankly, it's such a far-fetched concept, it's no wonder we can't really answer the question with any accuracy. We hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think would happen if you were born in outer space? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you have a good idea for a video, we'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Music?